Hello everyone, and welcome to part 3 of the Astroneer Build Along calculator. Now this time we're going to be covering the actual operands of being able to take the inputs that we have already set up and be able to add them together into a series of registers. We're not going to be displaying the answer yet, that will be in part 4, but we're going to basically be tying these two together so we can have the intermittent equals stage. Now, before we get there, I just want to go over some quick mention of binary addition. It works exactly the same as addition. These are my two inputs, these four are my outputs, and then these are my carries just to make it so that I can kind of set it out pretty easily. So for example, this plus that would just be 1, 1, 1, 0, and it would quite simply be exactly like that. Now, where this gets complicated is when we have two inputs at the same time. So in this case, adding these two together, 1 plus 0 is 1, 1 plus 1 is technically 0, because in binary we have this stay off, but we then carry the 1 over. 1 plus 1 plus 1 is, yes, it's 3, but this is technically 1. So this would turn on, and we would still carry. And then this would be 1 plus 0 is then 1, 1, 0, 1. And that is the answer of adding 1, 1, 1 to 1, 1, 0. Now, if you guys notice, what you can actually do is you can just have one singular switch for the output, but toggle it every single time we have an input. So for example, right now it's off, we toggle it once, now it would be on. Say it's off, we toggle it twice, turns it on, turns it back off, it stays off. We have 3 of them. Turn it on, turn it off, turn it back on, we have our 1. Turn it on, we have our 1. So that's the strategy that we're going to be kind of taking place here, and we're going to kind of break it out a little bit just so that we have enough cable pins for what we need. So if we grab the button repeater, like we have been making use of, there we are, we're going to have 3 inputs for the first input, for 3 bits for the first input, and then we're going to have 3 bits for the second input. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to kind of tie these guys over. So I'm going to start at the bottom, so this is most significant to least significant, just to make sure that we have enough cable pins for this, because these guys themselves only had 3 left, so it wasn't really quite enough, and I just want to make sure that we do have enough for anything that we try to do. This is kind of like a foresight thing. And we're also going to make use of the clicking from a distance to have the cable pin snap to it. Once again, it still works in the most recent update that just came out very, very recently, 1.18, and we can still make sure that this still functions properly, which is good. So that's going to be just a quick advantage that we're going to be making use of. So we have our buttons here. Again, if we want to break this into multiple things, we do have to place a quick junction right before it. So this is going to, again, set up the extra cable pins that we're going to need for various purposes. So now we have our 3 inputs that are going to be placed right over here. We're going to need a little bit of power in order to flow through our switches properly. So as per usual, I'm going to grab our small a as well as the RTG, place it right on, and then set it up right over here. Now there's going to be 2 tiers to this. There's going to be an upper tier and a lower tier. The lower tier is going to be exactly what I have mentioned. We're going to have our 3 switches, 1, 2, 3, sorry, 4 switches, my bad. We're going to have our 4 switches all in the off state, and these are going to lead to power sensors in a moment. Now the other thing is we're going to have an upper tier, and this upper tier is only going to be 3 switches this time. And I will explain what this is intended to do in just a moment. But as always, we do need to make sure that we split our power up appropriately, so I'm just going to set 2 of these guys out real fast for there, and I'm going to do, I think we can probably make it work right about here. I just want to make sure that we have enough space for it, and we're going to need another one, and then a third. So, pass power through, spread it out into each of the individual switches that we need, because we need to make sure that we can detect it, of course. And then we'll be able to place our power sensors down and be able to make the next step. There we are. So if you really wanted to, you could definitely add a little bit more space here. This is not going to be big. We're just going to be placing our power sensors down. But if you want to make it look a little bit nicer, then by all means, I definitely implore you to do so. So we're going to place these 3 down, and there we go for all 4 of these. So these are going to be triggering our actual storage of the solution. So for now, we're not really going to worry about that too much. And actually, I did just have an interesting thought that we should probably do an extra switch in between for another purpose that I will explain when we get there. So let me just grab that switch out and then place this one right in between. So by having this extra set of switches right here that we're wiring up right now, essentially this makes it a 2-input AND gate. So we need this condition to be met as well as this condition to be met in order to trigger these power sensors. And the first condition is going to be our binary addition that we kind of went over in that little example I set up beforehand. So this is our least significant bit. We're going to place both of them on the same switch because that is going to be what triggers whether we have a bit here or not. Second one is going to go on the second switch because once again, we can treat the addition like just toggling the same switch over and over again because again, if we have 2 bits both triggering it, it'll turn on, then it'll turn back off, and we'll detect a carry to move to the next one. And that's exactly what this upper region is. This is our carry region. Now, for the 0th location, we're never going to have a carry because we're never going to have an extra digit coming in to this 0th location. The carry starts here if we add the 2 0th bit as both 1, and then we get the carry over. So this is going to trigger this one is going to trigger this one, and this one is going to trigger this one. And there we go. That's our carry set up. Except we need to determine what also triggers the carry. So what triggers this carry happening? Ooh, actually, we did also make a quick little marginal mistake too. This is going to be another 2-input AND gate. We're going to have 2 conditions that need to be met in order for this to happen properly. So we're going to have our 2 switches right here. And this is one thing that's actually pretty commonly happens, I guess, is I start to do something and I realize that there's only some slight quick thing I need to make use of instead. So there is a lot of debug work. This is something I've done quite a bit. This is something I haven't done as much. So it is definitely still doable. It's not too complicated to add stuff. But as I said, I did just need to make sure that I set this up properly. So what this is going to do is when we have 2 of these guys being bits that are turned on, they will trigger the same switches, and that will tell us that we can carry a bit over. And once again, the switches are all going to be determined to cause the bits to appear in certain ways. Now, the reason that we took the second row of switches here is because those are going to be enable switches. So when we want to do our actual equals, we're going to trigger a button that's way out here. And that's going to be essentially our enable. That's going to say, you know what, now we want power to flow through, and now we actually want to trigger this happening. So I definitely, actually, we don't even need this. I do like to use buttons closer to where they need to go, just so I can so-called like have it where I need it to be. But because we're only going to be triggering the enable with this, we don't actually need another button there. But if I wanted it to be closer to where it needs to go, then I could definitely have done so. And frankly, that's it. We did it. None of these generators are on, so we are in the proper initial condition. And we can go through a little quick test, and I can show you exactly what I mean. So right now, both inputs are at 0, 0, 0. And if we trigger the second input, notice that this sent power to this power sensor. We know that all of this works, so we're not going to be worried about that. But this power sensor triggers this button, which opens up the first condition for our carry, and also opens up our first bit, because 0, 0, 0, 0 plus 0, 0, 1 is going to be 0, 0, 0, 1. Perfect, not a problem. Now if we were to flip this again, we go to the next bit, this loses power. So we trigger this button once again and turn off all of the switches that we had previously just turned on. And now this generator triggers its own power sensor, which triggers the second button and opens up the first condition of the carry, as well as opens up the first bit. Because, again, 0, 0, 0 plus 0, 1, 0 is going to be 0, 0, 1, 0. So now we're going to modify this one a little bit. So this one is going to, first bit is going to be just 0, 0, 1, 1, and 0, 0, 1, 1. That's exactly what we see. And we see that once again, the first condition of the first bit, and then the second condition of the 0th bit is now enabled. So if we were to trigger this one, we would now get a carry condition. So let's see how exactly we handled that. We now have both conditions of the carry open, so this power switch triggered. And this triggered this button. Now, this switch is the only switch that ended up triggering this condition, because we have this flowing through to trigger these two switches, but this one also does the same, so it turns it back off. And this one is from the only carry, so it's 0, 1, 0, 0. And that is the sum of 0, 1, 0 plus 0, 1, 0. The last step that we will not be doing in this video, but we will be doing in the next part, is going to actually be tying this to a set of generators and being able to break it out and be able to actually display the addition here. So this one is pretty much the most computationally complex part, but it's actually pretty small. It doesn't take up a lot of space, but we are doubling up a lot of things by having a lot of the same switches and buttons go to the same locations. So that's kind of a quick little clever way that you can use to minimize the complexity of this circuit, and hopefully it was relatively easy to understand. Just to again give you a little bit of example, when you do press the equals button, this will open up the enable switches, so now we actually have power flowing through to the power sensors, and then we could do all of our mathematics that we would wish to. So I'm going to remove the enable, so it's no longer moving to the power switches, and I'm just going to reset these guys back to 0. Actually, we can do a quick little pause on 7 to see what happens with everything set in the 1, 1, 1 position. So keep in mind, both two inputs are now in 1, 1, 1, and we can see that this initial one was triggered twice, because this is a 1 and this is a 1, so that's off. This one was triggered twice, but remember, we have our carry enabled. So this was triggered 3 times and is open. This also has its own carry though, because 1 plus 1 plus 1 is carry 1 equal to 1. So we carry again, trigger this 3 times, carry again, trigger this once, because we have no other direct inputs for here. So the solution of 1, 1, 1 plus 1, 1, 1 is going to be 1, 1, 1, 0, which is exactly what we would expect. So again, hopefully this was relatively easy to follow. Again, if you have any questions, by all means, feel free to ask them. This one, again, is going to be the most computationally complex, even though the layout is a lot more simple. We're kind of making use of some shortcuts just to make sure that the addition works properly. But yeah, that's the general premise of how we can do addition. And later when we do subtraction, there will be more stuff that we need to add and whatnot, which is why it was useful to break these buttons out now. But until then, the next step is to actually have a set of generators to display the solution properly. So hopefully we'll see you guys in that next part. It should be coming out relatively soon as well, but we'll see you in that video. Have a good one, everyone.